You're allowed to be happy. If you convinced yourself somehow that it's not for you and this is what, adults do and we just stay miserable, that's not true. I mean, someone told you a lie. Hey there, I'm Goli Kalkaran, and this is Lessons from a Quitter, where we believe that it's never too late to start over. No matter how much time or money you've spent getting to where you are, if ultimately you are not happy, then it's time to get out. If you're feeling stuck and you feel like there's gotta be more, there's gotta be a way to feel fulfilled and excited about what you do, then this is the podcast for you. Each week, I will sit down with an inspiring guest who quit their professional career in order to forge their own path and create a life that they love. Hello, beautiful people. Merry Christmas. Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me. We're at the end of 2018. I still can't believe it. It's a little crazy how time flies, but here we are about to embark on 2019. And I wanted to take this episode as the holiday season to just chat a little bit about the new year and what I plan to do, what, hopefully I can help you guys with, talk a little bit about goal setting. So that's what this episode's going to be. If you're new to this podcast, this is not the typical format. I mostly interview other guests about how they've quit their careers to forge their own path. So wait for that in the new year. There will be amazing guests to come. I'm super excited about what's going to happen with the podcast. But I just thought, since it is a holiday weekend, we might try something a little different. I would love to hear your thoughts on this episode or any of them. So go ahead and find me on Instagram at Lessons from a Quitter and send me a message. Let me know what you think. I love hearing from you guys. First, let me thank you. I've had such an amazing time doing this podcast. It's now going on 6 months. So we're half a year into this. And, I don't want to sound super dramatic and say it's been life-changing, but it really has. It's been one of the best decisions I've ever made. People reach out to me every day, and it blows my mind that they're actually listening and that people are relating and feel the same way. And I love that. I'm really excited about creating more of a community for myself, even, not just for you guys. I feel like I love connecting with people and feeling the relief that it's not just me. So I'm hoping to do that. I'm actually thinking about doing maybe some meetups in the future. So we, people in where I am or maybe places I'll go can meet up and discuss, some of the stuff that we talk about on the podcast. Now, for today's episode, I want to talk a little bit about, the purpose of this. I started this podcast because I know there are tons of people like me that were miserable in their careers. And I'm so happy that people have found the podcast and that like it. But, I don't want to just do this for inspiration. I really want to help people figure out how to create a life that they love. And if that means quitting your job, then that's what that means. If it doesn't, it means maybe making a change, whatever it is. As we embark kind of on this new year, I really hope that you take the time to figure out what that means for you and how you can start planning. Maybe you don't quit this year, but maybe this is the year that you start thinking about how to get your finances in order so that you can quit. Or you think about what are the other things that you can develop that you might want to turn into a side hustle later. Maybe you start exploring what are your passions. A lot of time is wasted just complaining about what we don't like. And I think the sooner we all realize that we have agency, you're not stuck anywhere. Somebody recently described lawyers, and I think it could be a lot of other people, as caged birds with the door open. And I think it's just the best way to describe a lot of people that are unhappy in their circumstances. A lot of times we act as though there is no way we can leave, where it's literally like you can leave any day you want. You can quit tomorrow. It's just a matter of like the fear of how will you survive and how will you make things work and how will you provide for your family and whatnot. And those are real fears and there's stuff that you have to think through, but it doesn't mean that you're actually stuck. So either make a decision that you want to stay and understand that that is your agency and you're choosing that. Whatever you're doing is a choice. If you're staying, it's a choice. And that can actually make you happier. I've heard from people that say like, once I decided I want to be a lawyer and I chose this, then I stopped complaining every day to my coworkers. And that just made me happier because I wasn't focusing on all of the horrible things. And so maybe that's your choice. That's great. But if you're deciding that, no, I'm not going to be happy in this, then make that choice and decide maybe you do it in a year, maybe you do it in 3 years, but you're on that road. And like, what does that road look like? What do you have to do? And that's sort of what we'll get into with goal setting. But that's what I want from this podcast. That's what I want for you. I get a lot of pushback where people think like, well, we're not all made to just, live in our joy and be happy. And that's like very woo-woo new age stuff. I don't know how else to say it. Like, you're allowed to be happy. If you convinced yourself somehow that it's not for you and this is what, adults do and we just stay miserable, that's not true. I mean, someone told you a lie, and maybe that was the situation before, and maybe that was the situation in different people's lives because of their circumstances, but that's not the truth. You're allowed to enjoy your work. You're allowed to be happy. And I think sometimes it helps people think of it in a different way. I recently saw an article and I posted it on different social media channels. It was a gut-wrenching, heartbreaking article that was written by the widow of a young lawyer who committed suicide about 2 months ago in the parking garage of his law firm. And his widow penned this op-ed that was horrible. And she, acknowledged that he obviously had some mental illness and depression, but she blamed a lot on his job and the hours and the pressure and the amount that he worked and the lack of support and everything else. And reading that article, besides making me, unbelievably sad, it made me really angry. And it reminded me of why I did this podcast, because it's not something that's new. It's not like none of us know that there is depression or suicide or substance abuse in our professions. It's readily talked about. We get continuing education on them, and we're kind of taught to deal with the symptoms, right? And you deal with you take antidepressants, or you kind of we do this like quote unquote self-help, and how do you self-care, or whatever that means, like getting a massage. I mean, we sort of ignore what the root of the problem is. And when I was reading it, I was thinking, she talked about how she had said to him, let's just quit. Let's go somewhere else. Let's do something else. And he had this, she calls it maladaptive perfectionism, which a lot of people have, where they're never good enough for themselves. They always feel like they're not doing enough. And I think a lot of people in these fields suffer from this because you've always been perfect. You've always been at the top of your class. You've always done the right thing. And when you're not hitting that, when you're in a grueling field where it's never good enough, you blame yourself. And she was saying that was a cause of him ultimately taking his life. And I thought about it, and I thought, if you tell anybody about the situation, there wouldn't be one person that would say, no, he shouldn't have quit. Like, he should have just stuck it out. Anybody that listens to that would say, like, I wish he would have stopped and done anything else. Go and work at a Starbucks. Who cares? Like, it's not worth it. If you realize how valuable his life was and how much he affected people and the people around him, and the glowing things that his wife wrote about him. I mean, he seemed like the kindest, most caring person. And I think that everybody would advise him to do that. And yet I wonder, why does it have to get to that? Why does it have to be that you're depressed, or you're numbing yourself with alcohol, or you're doing any of these really hurtful things, let alone suicide, for people to understand that you made a choice that maybe isn't a good one for you? And I would just say that to you. I mean, you don't have to get to that point. You don't have to sacrifice yourself until you're the point that you've worked yourself to the bone where you have a heart attack, or you're having panic attacks, or you're depressed. It could literally just be that you are unhappy and you recognize that and you realize this is not what you want for your life. You are allowed to be happy. And so I do think it's a warning. Reading that story kind of reaffirmed for me that this is something we should be talking about. It's so cliche to be like, life's too short, but it is. So what are you doing with it? What do you want to do? I think it's the perfect time in the new year to think about it, because we all think about goals. And I know goal setting gets a bad rap. It's like the new year, new you. And everybody jokes about how, people are in the gym all of a sudden for the month of January and then it's done. And yeah, I think, you should take a better approach at approaching goals, but I don't think it's a bad thing. I think we should all be writing goals more often. And, whenever there's a start of a new something, it's a good time for people to start. So a new year just gives you a good break to say hey, let me reevaluate my life. And so I would encourage all of you to do that. Take the time and reevaluate, 2008 went by. Like, what did you do that you are proud of? And what did you do that you don't want to do anymore? At the end of this year, you're going to think the same thing. You're going to think, I can't believe 2019 is over. So like, what is that going to look like for you? So getting into that, I do think there are ways to set goals that will make you successful, that you are not going to drop in a month. First, don't set ridiculous goals. I think a lot of us are upset about one aspect and we want things to change within a month, but like that's not how you got there. So wanting to lose 20 pounds in the next 6 weeks is not a good goal because you're going to get burned out. Motivation doesn't last all the time. And so it has to be something that you're going to keep up with. And so one of, I don't know if you've heard of these things called SMART goals. First letter of SMART stands for specific. So it has to be a very specific goal. And I would say that it has to be an actionable goal. Like it has to be something that you are so clear on what that means. So it's not just like, I'm going to lose weight. It's, I'm going to work out 3 days a week. And these are the days, these are the times. Like nothing will take over that. It's like an appointment for myself. And I will stick with it for a year. I'm not going to say, for a month or whatever. It's going to be a long-term thing. There is a book that I really recommend. I have it on the website on the resources page. It's called The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. And it is perfect at really making crystal clear how to make change in your life. And the whole point of the book is that change happens not because of these sweeping actions that we take or all of a sudden we want to like uproot everything. Change happens with small, purposeful steps over and over and over again. There's a compound effect when you do little things. And so his whole thesis is that like if you want to change something, change little things and make it a habit, something that you're going to stick with. And it's not going to be, really difficult, but you can do it over and over again. And one example that he gives, he talks about these 3 guys and he says, one of them decides to cut 125 calories a day from his diet. So it's not a lot. Maybe it's a soda. Maybe it's like a little bit less of cereal that morning, or, he uses mustard instead of mayo. Another guy decides that, he wants a little more fun in his life. So he installs a bar in his house and he's having like one more cocktail a night, which comes out to about like 100, 150 calories. And he eats a little bit more indulgently. And the other guy doesn't make any changes, just lives his life. And he was saying, if you follow these, after 5 months, there's no noticeable difference. Like you would never look at these guys and notice anything. And so for a lot of people, it's hard to kind of make that sacrifice because it takes so long. But that time is going to pass. So at 10 months, you might notice a little, not a lot, but you notice a little. When you get to 18 months or 24 months, they're huge differences because it's a compound effect, right? So after 2 years, after 3 years, the guy that just stopped drinking soda is now down 30 pounds. And the guy that was just having one drink here or like whatever is up an additional 30 pounds. So now there's 60 pounds difference between these 2 guys that started out as the same. And again, I know a lot of times like we don't want to look at 3 years down the line, but that time is going to pass. And so why not pick something that you're actually going to stick with instead of picking these crazy goals that even if you get to, like you're not going to maintain. You might lose 20 pounds, but you're not going to starve yourself. And so you're going to go back to eating and then you're going to gain it again. Or the same thing, whether it's, a goal of hanging out more with your kids, make it something small. Make it like, we're going to play 1 game a week. I want to add to like the time and you will add to that because once that becomes a habit, then making another change is not as hard. And one of the most interesting things that he talks about is not just that habit. Like, so let's say you just add drinking an extra cup of water a day, like how that can affect you. What he talks about is in addition to how over time these habits will change your life, there's a ripple effect, right? So the person that over these 2 years, 3 years has lost 10, 20, 30 pounds has more energy, is in a better mood, has more self-confidence. That affects his relationship with his wife, with his kids. That makes him more active. It makes him more involved in other things. That gives him the confidence that he knows he can do, X, Y, and Z. And so it ends up changing his life dramatically in all aspects. And the same with the person that was just adding, a little cheese here and there or like a drink here and there. That person over time becomes more sluggish, becomes tired, doesn't have the energy to play with his kids as much, doesn't want to go on the walks that he used to go on with his wife. That starts affecting their relationship. His self-confidence goes down because he's gained all this weight. He tries doing these fad diets. They don't work. I mean, it's all connected, right? And so obviously with weight is like an easy example, but this is with everything, whether it's your work, whether it's your relationships. So I would just encourage you that if you're going to start setting goals, why not pick some easy things? Pick a couple of things that you know you can stick to, whether it's drink an extra glass of water or meditate for 10 minutes a day or, whatever it is. If it's something about financial, like maybe saving a small amount more than you do, like putting it aside so that it's not something that's going to have a huge effect. Like you don't have to sell everything you own and pay off all your debts in the next 3 months, but you can start figuring out, if I start compounding, if I save or invest X amount in 3 years, how much will that net me, And once you start figuring that kind of stuff out, you can see how much the long term it can have an effect on you. I would say that in addition to that, besides setting specific and smaller goals that are attainable so that they become habits, one of the main things about goal setting is that it has to be something that's constantly in the front of your mind, that you're constantly thinking about. Okay, so the reason that most of us fail at our goals is because we make it once in January. We make these like lofty, amorphous goals. Like I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to spend more time with my kids and I'm going to find my passion. Like, okay. And then within a month, you haven't even thought about it and it's overwhelming. It's like, how do you find your passion? What does that even mean? How are you losing weight? And you start getting like upset about it. You just forget. Okay. A couple months in, like it's completely gone until next year. So the way to actually do it, if you really want to make change, is you have to reevaluate those goals. Like first, you have to set specific ones. And second, you have to constantly reevaluate it. So what I heard one guy does, he writes his goals in a calendar and, just like bullet points of like all of the major, 5, 6 goals that he wants for that year. And he sets it as a calendar reminder every single morning. So every morning when he opens up his email, the calendar reminder opens up and it has a list of his goals so he can read it quickly. Now, you may not have to do it every morning, but what if you did it once a month? What if on the first of every month, your goals pop up and you look at it so that you remember? And so and let's say in the month before you didn't do well on it, 1 or 2 of them. There's no point in sitting and beating yourself up. And that's what we do. And then we constantly go through the negative self-talk of, I'm so lazy and I'm such a failure and I never do this. And I always let, myself down and I'm such a bad mom and whatever. Stop that. Realize that every month is just like a new year, right? It's a new month. It's a new day, whatever it is, you're going to start over. So even if you didn't do well in January, then you're going to do better in February. At least you're specific on what you want to do. And as you keep looking at it, it'll remind you and it'll keep you kind of accountable to yourself. And obviously accountability works. So maybe you do it with your husband or you do it with a friend and you guys check in on your goals. But as long as you have it more readily apparent, then you'll actually work on it more. And once you have specific goals, then you know exactly what you need to do. So let's say you wanted to walk 3 days a week and last month you kind of been doing it on and off. You know how to jump back on that horse. Okay, this week I'm going to start 3 days a week. And if you do that, you will see changes by the end of the year. You will get to next December and not feel this whole year flew by and I didn't do the stuff I wanted to do. You'll start realizing how to write better goals. I think that's actually a skill. I remember a couple of years ago when I was sitting down to write what I wanted, I was doing an exercise about goal setting and I literally couldn't think of things because I just wasn't used to formulating goals in this certain way and being super specific. And there's, the general ones that everyone does, but it took me a long time to think about it constantly that I started coming up with other goals. And I was like, oh, I could also do this. Oh, I really need to focus on this aspect. And so once you start doing it, I think it does open you up to other goals and fixing other areas and seeing how you can improve constantly. And so throughout the year, you can add goals. It doesn't then have to be a New Year's resolution. So those are some of my tips. I would love to hear what some of your goals are for the new year. And if I can help in any way, I would love to. Like I said, you could shoot me an email or find me on Instagram. I'm super excited about what the year has to come. And I really hope that it's going to be an amazing year for all of you. And I really think that you deserve to be happy and deserve to have all the things that you want and you can make it happen. You just got to take one step at a time. And I'm here for you. So reach out to me and we will be back next week with an incredible episode. So join us. Bye. Thank you so much for listening. I can't tell you how much it means to me. If you liked the podcast, Please rate and review us on iTunes. It'll help other people find the show. If you want to connect or reach out, follow along on Instagram and Facebook at Lessons from a Quitter and on Twitter at Quitter Podcast. I would love to hear from you guys, and I'll see you on the next episode.